Okay, so as we're just sitting here, not much is happening. Let's just direct our awareness to the sense of sitting, just the sensation on the body of sitting. So we're just directing our awareness to that particular sensation in the body, where it comes into contact with the chair, the sense of our weight on the chair, sense of feeling the support of the chair. Okay, we can also, let's say, direct our attention towards just the sound of the voice without worrying too much about the words or the meaning of the words, but just the pure audio input of the voice or any other sounds that may be present where you are. So we're just redirecting that awareness to sound. Okay, so we can easily see that we can shift our awareness between the sense of breathing, sense of sitting in the chair, sensation of sound. So we'll do the same thing, but we'll just shift the attention back on awareness itself. Just almost do like a U-turn in our head, and rather than looking outward, we just look at what's looking. Without trying to understand it, without trying to make anything of it, without trying to put labels on it. Just the direct sense of awareness, you could say resting in itself, prior to any content. So we can also drop any ideas that whatever content may be arising, such as thought, prevents us from noticing that awareness. Awareness is still present, even in the appearance of thought. So we can allow whatever sensations, feelings, thoughts, we can allow those to arise and still, we could say, remain in that perspective, in that view from awareness. Those arisings don't have the ability to disturb awareness. Our mind might. Our mind can convince us, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking. But awareness actually doesn't have a problem with that. Awareness is present, non-judgmental for whatever may be arising. It's just as it is, just the awareness, just the noticing, just that simple sense of aliveness, presence, being here in this moment. Just prior to all of those words. So it's not far away. We haven't attained anything that wasn't already there. We just came in through attention and sensations, and noticed what was, got quiet enough to notice what was already there, which is just this awareness. So it's not something that's absent that we have to gain. It's not something far away that we have to lasso and pull into ourselves. We can just notice, yes, it's is already present. And just see if just gently you can shift what is viewing, what's noticing, back into that awareness, prior to all thought, prior to all feelings, all sensations. Just come gently back into just that sense of noticing. Again, without trying to change anything, label anything, attain anything, make anything different than it is. We can also notice any attempt that the mind may make to sort of pull us away from that simple state of being. Just our simple beingness already present. I mean, the mind might say, well, is that all there is? You know, I expected something more. How about, where are all those fireworks? You know, so the mind is always wanting things to be better, more. And we can just see that as just the next thought arising within awareness. Let it be. And then just come back to that simple sense of being here, present, now. Nothing needs to change. We can just rest there. In and as that awareness. Awareness prior to all content. All content. Content doesn't improve it. It also doesn't detract from it. Awareness is that within which all of that happens. It's actually what we are. Okay, good. Everybody here? I thought tonight we could talk about, or pose the question, who is living this life? Or what is living this life? Same question. So if we just walked up to somebody on the street and that we didn't know and asked them, you know, sir, could I ask you, you know, who is living your life? You know, we'd get a funny look at best, you know, and you know, they may even question our sanity for asking such a question. But that question, what is living this life, is the fundamental question of this lifetime. You know, in spirituality, they talk about the big question, you know, the great matter of birth, life, and death, resolving that for ourselves. I think just to make things easier, we can, you know, birth, life, and death, but birth is a past event, has to do with the body. Death is a future event having to do with the body. So we can just look at life in this moment. And the good news is that if we can see what that is, what life is in this moment, we'll answer the other questions as well. So it's an efficient way to go about this, to look at what is living this life now in this present moment. And if we discover what is ultimately true in this moment, we can see what is ultimately true in all moments, under all circumstances. Because that's, as I use the term ultimately true, that's what I mean. You know, what is true under all circumstances, at all times, for everyone. You know, so it's not a matter of, you know, coming and going. It's not a matter of circumstances. It just is what is always the case, compared with which everything else is only relatively true. You know, it may have some truth to it, but it's not always true under all circumstances for everybody. So it sounded like somehow a grand terminology, but it's actually quite a simple statement once that which it points to is realized for ourselves. So we can look at this question like, you know, what is living this life? Well, you know, Ramana proposed the inquiry, what am I? It's essentially the same question, right? It's interesting to note that that was actually his second best instruction. You know, it was reserved for people who didn't, you know, weren't able to really abide by his first instruction. First instruction was just be still. People didn't understand that, you know, most people. The next question was inquire into who am I? But even that question can be misleading and has been misleading for a lot of seekers, because just the wording of the question, you know, who am I, implies that there's a who in there somewhere, some internal entity that we're looking for. And what a lot of people end up doing is looking for a new and improved version of what they take themselves to be, you know, our higher self. Right? But if we really go and you know, look at this issue, however it's stated, who am I? What am I? You know, who is the thinker of my thoughts? Who is the doer of my actions? Who is the observer of what I observe? You know, those questions, all basically the same question. Let's look first at the question of thinking. So we'll look at thinking and then we'll look at doing, you know, the two big entities. You know, something that our mind does, something that we feel like we do as a whole person. So thinking, you know, what we commonly take ourselves to be is, you know, sort of a combination, you know, a package of all our thoughts and beliefs and ideas, etc. One of which is, I am this body. Right? That is a thought, a belief thought, an assumed thought, but really requires further investigation, because without the thought being present, there's not a specific reference to this body. It requires our mind thinking over and over again until it becomes just a normal thing that what I am is this body. Are these thoughts? That's what most of us were taught to believe. And in fact, to even suggest that there might be some other way things work, just opens us up to, thinking that we're fools or worse. So, but this question of what is this thinking happening? So the thinking is undeniable. It's something that we can do as humans. Everyone can do it. Thinking is real. That's our experience, right? But to make the jump, therefore, there is a thinker in there somewhere. Some entity that is doing the thinking is a presumption. Right? So we can have, thoughts arise. But if there was a thinker, then we could control those thoughts. We could turn them on and off. We could think what we wanted to think, but we can't really do that. If we wake up in the middle of the night and, the problem from the day before comes roaring back at 3 o'clock in the morning, we can't just say to our mind, you know what, I'd really like to sleep now, so just let me just think about, I don't know, sheep jumping over the fence and let me go back to sleep. We can't do that. The mind has sort of a mind of its own. It keeps going with that energy, and any attempts that we have to stop that in those situations doesn't help. We can also notice when we sit down to meditate, if there was some entity internally that had control over this thinking process, we could just tell our thinking mind to, stop thinking for 30 minutes. I'm going to meditate now. 30 minutes from now, you can come back online and, we'll do something else. But, maybe a few people can do that, but, after, decades of meditation or techniques of mind control. But if that was an inherent ability in all of us, that there was a thinker present, then that thinker shouldn't require years and years and years of, strenuous effort to control those thoughts. We should just be able to do it naturally. Anybody should be able to do it. If there's a thinker there, a thinker of our thoughts, then we should just be able to turn it off and be done with it. So one of the questions that we can really look at is whether we choose to think our thoughts or whether thoughts just arise and then we notice them. Okay, if we choose to think our thoughts, which is sort of what it feels like some of the time, not a whole lot of the time, but there can be this thought process, and the assumption is, well, it must be me that's thinking those thoughts. But sometimes we can trace that back, and there can be some linearity to it. Like I can have a thought of, well, I'd like to eat pancakes for breakfast on Sunday, and there might be a prior thought that says, well, it's Sunday, and I often eat pancakes on Sunday, so maybe I'll have pancakes this morning. And we can trace it back and back and back. But when we really go to look for what thought was a thought that we decided to think, we can't quite find that. It's similar in a way to, in Hindu mythology, they have the image of the earth being supported in space somehow by 4 elephants who are standing on a turtle. That's the mythology. Big turtle. Right? The only question is, what's that turtle being supported by? I mean, the only possible answer would be another even bigger turtle. And then, of course, what's that turtle? You know, so we end up with this expression, turtles all the way down. You know, no origin, only one, in this case, one thought preceded by another thought, by another thought. So we have thoughts all the way down. You know, so we're just into this regression kind of thing where the thoughts arise from other thoughts. But at no point can we say, me as a separate entity decided to think that thought without the question arising, well, how did that thought arise? The decision to think that thought, right? Okay. So we can look at and wonder whether we are the thinker of thoughts, or whether it's more true to say that, actually I can't quite say where the thoughts come from, but they at some point arise in consciousness, maybe have a certain pattern for a while, and we notice them. There's something that obviously notices the thoughts. We're aware of the thoughts. But there are different implications if we say that, no, I am the thinker of my thoughts, then we're responsible for those thoughts. You know, and it's not, we like to be responsible for the good thoughts, right? The thoughts that we like. We don't like to be held responsible for the, you know, all this, you know, crazy judgmental, you know, self-justifying, you know, lustful, irresponsible, hateful thoughts. None of those. We don't like those so much. But it's an all or nothing question. You know, if we're responsible for our thoughts, you got to take all of them, right? You know, but if thoughts arise into our consciousness, you know, without us choosing them to be there, then we can't be held responsible for the thoughts going through our head. You know, we could be held responsible if we choose to act on those thoughts. That's a whole different story, right? But just the thoughts arising in our head, it could be, you know, who knows what, any kind of, you know, depending on, you know, how the day is going for us, it could be, you know, chaotic thoughts, you know, anxious thoughts, irrational thoughts, whatever. Okay. So that sense of thought arising into consciousness and we are aware of it is fundamentally different. There's thinking, but there's no thinker. Right? Does that make sense? So we can, you know, if we wanted to sort of delve into psychology, we could say, well, you know, there's a subconscious, and then some of those thoughts arise from the subconscious into consciousness. That may be, but, you know, is there an entity deciding which thoughts to cause to, you know, be pulled up into active consciousness for, you know, their 15 seconds of fame? You know, we're back to the same issue. You know, is there a thinker of those thoughts, or do thoughts arise and then we are aware of them? So it is true that we can sort of, you know, tune the brain to, you know, so that the thoughts being received, being the thinking that happens, the patterns that happen, are more constructive. You know, obviously, if we watch political news for 8 hours a day intently, there's going to be a higher level of, you know, anxiety and, you know, just that anxious energy than if we, for example, went for a hike in the woods for 8 hours. You know, so what we choose to do has an effect on, you know, the content arising in our brain. but it still doesn't mean that there is a thinker of those thoughts. Thinking happens, but there's still no evidence of a thinker, an entity in there, some little Wizard of Oz pulling the levers in there. Okay, there was, Adyashanti tells the story of early in his spiritual endeavors, but a couple years in of meditating, hours and hours a day, 3, 4, 5 hours a day for several years. And it was only after a couple of years that he had the thought one day, a sort of curious thought, I wonder who it is that is meditating. I mean, what he says is, you would think you'd have that thought the first day you sat down, but here it was a couple of years later, and he was meditating his heart out, but looking for something outside, looking out, you could say out in front of oneself. And it may be just because our eyes are in the front of our head and that's where they look, and they're sort of the dominant sense organ. So we tend to look outward, outward in front of us, so to speak, without ever turning around like we did in the first few minutes tonight, where we actually turned around, did a U-turn in our head and looked back to see what it was that was looking. Okay, so that's normally what happens in, well, life. We look first to the outside, for happiness, however that's defined for ourselves. So we can look out there and, its experiences, its memories that we can, pursue that can somehow justify our expenditure of time and energy. But hey, we had all these experiences and it was great, and I can remember them and tell my friends, or we could go, just straight for pleasure, forget all that, meaningful, searching in life for a meaningful career, meaningful relationship. We can just go straight for pleasure and, look at wealth, power, fame, drugs, sex, rock and roll. Either way, we're still looking outward, whether it's mental experiences, whether it's physical experiences, sense experiences, for seeking happiness. So, even in our Declaration of Independence, we're guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's interesting that we're not guaranteed happiness, but we are guaranteed the pursuit of happiness, which we're real good at as Americans. We're great at pursuing happiness, not so good at finding it. So this is, sort of one way we try to define who we are by what we've done, what we've accomplished, what memories we can remember and feel good about, or bad about, either way. I remember my dad, when he was in his 90s, he would often sort of recite his business accomplishments, in some sense seeming to imply that that was what gave him his identity, his meaning in life. It was a worthy trade. I traded my time and energy in this life for this sense of accomplishments. Okay, that's fine. Everybody gets to choose, but it hopefully is clear that that's something that we do and not something that we are. So the other thing that we can look at is who is the doer of what we do. You know, is there a doer here? Is there someone that chooses to do this rather than that? So it might be instructive to recall the Buddhist, one of his famous sayings, and that is, events happen, deeds are done, but there's no individual doer thereof. Okay, so the first two statements are obvious. Events happen, sure. Deeds are done, yes. But there's no individual doer thereof. And then it's like, wait a minute, you know, I'm not willing to go there. Because there's this sense of, no, I am choosing to do this rather than that. You know, in this moment, I can choose to pick up this pencil or not pick it up. I can choose to go left or right. There's that sense of, you know, I can choose. I am a separate, independent person and with the ability to choose to do this or that. But it's important, before we get too certain about that, it's important to be willing to look at the extent of our own conditioning. And I know I've talked about that quite a number of times, but it's shocking when we first realize the extent to which things that we do, believe, our careers, our hobbies, our clothes that we wear, our philosophies, how to such great extent that is a result of you know, our family upbringing, where we were born, our economic status, our cultural heritage, which country we were born in, which friends we had, which teachers we were impressed by, this or that. And at this point in life, what we experience, we tend to experience through the filter of all of that conditioning, which affects our next experience, which adds to our conditioning, which further colors our future experience. Okay, so it can be shocking when we first see the extent of that. And if we have the belief in that moment that that's the entirety of what I am, is just this conditioned sort of automaton being, you know, that has, you know, is just acting in a very mechanical way. If we believe that's the end of the story, it looks pretty bleak, right? If that were the end of the story, then you know, Shakespeare's character Hamlet would be justified in describing life as he does, as a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, right? So that, if we take that to be the end of the story, then we've made a sort of grievous detour down the path of nihilism. Oh, you know, woe is me. Life is just mechanical, and you know, I'm just destined to live it out as best I can, right? If we take it to be that, then we've missed the opportunity. But if we take it to be a question like, if what I take myself to be is based on all of this prior conditioning, everything I think and feel about myself and other people in the world, and my ideas and opinions and memories and etc., hopes, dreams, fears, all of that. If I can see it just as a result of prior conditioning, prior experiences, not fresh, not alive, not original, probably not even appropriate to whatever situation is present, because it comes out of the past. It's stale. Right? But if we see that, then perhaps we can ask the question, I wonder if there's anything else. I wonder if there's, seeing all this conditioned behavior in myself, not in other people. You can say, well, I can see it in them, but hey, me, not conditioned, not here. The important thing is to notice it in ourselves, right? But if we can see that, then we can ask, I wonder if there's anything that's not conditioned, anything that does respond in a fresh way, has more alive feeling, more joyful feeling. Is there anything that's really unconditioned? And the good news is the answer is yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's this awareness that we pointed to in the first place. And the doorway to that is really the sense of I am, right? So the question, coming back to the question, who is living this life? Essentially the same question is, what am I? And the best that the mind can do within mental conceptualization is the concept, I am, right? It's as far as the mind can go towards reality. Still a concept, still within the sphere of the mind, but just sensing into that sense of I am. Just not I am something after those two words, like not I am a man, I am 46 years old, I am a banker, I am a mother, brother, sister. None of that after it. Just that simple sense of aliveness. I exist in this moment. I am. Right? So it's one of the things, not even one of the things, it's probably the only thing that we can say with any degree of certainty, I am. And we can say that with certainty only because we can't say the opposite. We can't say, I am not, right? I don't exist. We can't say that simply because we'd have to exist to be present enough to say, no, I don't exist. So that's where we get to, just these two small words, 3 letters, I am. Okay, so the whole question of birth, life, and death, can reduce to the question, the inquiry of I am. What is this I am? What is this simple sense of being in this moment? What is that? Okay, just 2 words, right? Okay, I. So as long as we don't sort of begin to try to interpret or figure out what the I means, like well, it must be here somewhere. This is who I am. I've always taken myself to be this, down that road. But rather just sense into that, the intimacy of, the sort of the ultimate subject, the deepest part of myself, that I, without attributing it to a mind or philosophy or this body or not even that, just this sense of, I don't know what it is, but there's something that is here that's not other than me, right? I don't know what it is. It's not confined to a thought. It's not confined to my brain. It's not confined to this body. It's just this sense of, without returning to thought and memory, it's just a sense of, no, there's something that here is present, and I am not other than that. I may not have a clue what that is, right? But I can sense it. I can't describe it, but I can sense it. This I, this very innermost, intimate, personal, something that's always been there, even though my body's changed, my circumstances changed, but there's something that's always been there that's essential. And then the second word is am, right? Form of being, be, the verb to be, beingness. You know, what does that mean? Is it a separate being or just being? You know, so this is sort of the frontier of what the mind can do. It can bring us to that inquiry beyond which is territory beyond the minds, beyond conceptual thought. It is can be experienced. It can be realized because it is actually what we are. But the doorway can be just reducing the question to the most basic thing that we can say about what is living this life, and that sense of I am. Right? So that question, the usefulness of the question, what is living this life or who am I, is not to try to answer it philosophically or conceptually or imagine, you know, 7 levels of heaven, but really to sense into that here, internally, not as this body, not as this mind, but just in our own innermost sense, beyond thought, beyond conceptions, willing to let everything go to discover what that is. Okay, so this is just the direct inquiry into that sense of I am. Nisargadatta talks about this. Just remain with the sense of I am, without trying to answer it, explain it, understand it, improve it, look for it in here somewhere. Just sense into that sense of I am, I exist. There's aliveness here. There's presence here now. It leads us into a wordless state, right? Another way we can look at this is not look at awareness as a concept, but to inquire, how do I know that I am aware in this moment? How do I know that? You know, if you ask someone or tell someone to you know, direct your awareness at your foot, you know, you can look at your foot and direct your awareness there, and there's your foot. You know, you can do that with your hand. But if you ask someone, are you aware? You have to say yes, right? You can't say, no, I'm not aware. Yeah. So it's just this everyday awareness that we're talking about. So you have to say, yes, admit, you know, yes, I'm aware, okay. And then the next question is, how do you know that you're aware? You know, if you're asked, how do you, you know, how do you know that you have a foot? Can you direct your awareness there? Yes, of course. Hand? Yes, sure. Awareness itself? The only thing that can truly be aware Awareness is awareness itself. You know, the mind may try to do it. The mind may try to have a concept about it. You know, remembering the last time it visited spaciousness, awareness, right? That's not the same thing. It's not a memory. It's not a philosophy. It's not a state. It's not a goal. It's what we are. So those are like two aspects of the same doorway. Just really allowing our curiosity and willingness to look and sort of daring to look through this doorway that's at the frontier of our conceptual mind, which is I am. Just a simple statement, I am. The truth of that we can experience just simply like, yes, I am here. I know that. I may not know what it is, but I know that there's something that's here, that's present, that's alive, that exists now. That I know. I might not have any idea what that is or what that means, but I know that. So that's the doorway, right? Just to stay with that and to allow it to reveal itself when we realize that it's beyond our capability to put into a conceptual box, beyond our ability to understand, but it's not beyond our capacity to realize, because it's what we are. So it's just allowing ourselves to just be willing to go beyond where our mind is willing to go, beyond the conceptual, the desire, the demand of our minds to conceptualize everything, to turn everything into an object, that it is under the mental control of our mind. We can just see that tendency and just see it as a tendency of the mind. It's just something that we've trained the brain to do. It does it. No blame here. We just see it as a tendency and let it be. We don't even have to change it. We just can see that what we truly are won't be found there, won't be found in conceptual thought. Because it's not a conceptual thought. Any conceptual thought, it's what we are. It's the expanse, the awareness, the entire field of existence within which everything happens, including these bodies, these minds, these thoughts, these activities, these experiences, these ideas. All of that happens within this field of awareness that we are. In that field of awareness that we are that already. It's not something that we improve our way to. It's not something that we become that we're not already. It's something that's already happening. It is actually what is living this life already. Our mind just takes credit for it. It's actually the immensity of life itself that's living this life. But we like to think, no, we're in charge. We're doing it. I'm thinking these thoughts. I'm doing these actions. It's me. Except when we actually go to look for that me in there somewhere, that entity, we can't find it. There's thinking, but there's no thinker. There's doing, of course, but there's no entity in there that we can single out that's doing. It's just a mental belief that, no, that's me, that's who's actually doing all of this. But when we really sense into that and allow that which we are to come more to the foreground, to flow through this body-mind more transparently, life takes on much more of a joyful tone.